Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order, the September 24th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. If you'll all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ryan, would you read the roll call?
Commissioner John Ebneter.
Present.
Commissioner Ramiro Maldonado.
Present.
Commissioner Margaret Williams. Present. Vice Chair Ellen Mallory, acting as chair this evening.
Present. We'll move on to the consent calendar, which are the meeting minutes from the meeting of September 10th. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval?
I motion that we approve the minutes from the September 10th meeting.
Second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries. The meeting will now be open for the public comment period, and this is an opportunity for people to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Do we have any speaker slips? Seeing none, we'll move on to the public hearing, which is the condominium conversion.
Good evening, Vice Chair Mallory and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Rendell Bustos, Associate Planner and Staff Planner for the project before you this evening, which is a public hearing for condominium conversion of an existing duplex located at 526 and 528 North Claremont Street, PA 2018-061. Beginning with the project site, 526 and 528 North Claremont Street is located on a single 7,903 square foot parcel in the city's north central neighborhood. The site is zoned R2, which is the city's two-family dwelling zone, and is designated by the general plan as low-density multifamily. The project before you this evening consists of one entitlement, which is for a tentative parcel map for the conversion of an existing duplex into condominium units. The existing duplex was constructed in 2006, and under this project, no additional floor area or dwelling units are proposed. So these images show the existing duplex in its current condition. The units are attached with their respective one-car garages in between the two. The current property owner has owned the property since 2004 and has since resided in one of the units as a primary residence and has leased the additional unit to various tenants. And since December of 2018, the second unit has remained unleased. So this is a brief snapshot of some of the minimum development standards found in the R2 zone. So in addition to meeting the maximum floor area ratio, floor area, max density of 2 units, and parking, the current site meets all required setbacks and height requirements, thus not necessitating any exterior alterations to the building. So as a tentative map involving a condominium conversion, the municipal code outlines additional requirements specific to condominium conversions. Some of these requirements are listed here, which pertain to tenant notification, tenant relocation, the building's condition, and zoning conformance. So as proposed, the project conforms with these requirements given that adequate tenant statements related to, again, notification and relocation had been provided, as well as detailed property reports. And as the previous slide showed, requirements pertaining to density and parking are met in the site's existing condition. So to conclude, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission motions to approve the tentative parcel map for the condominium conversion of the existing duplex based on the findings for approval in Attachment 1 and subject to the conditions of approval in Attachment 2. This concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions the Commission may have. The property owner, who's also the applicant, is present this evening and will be providing a brief presentation. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Danny Meredith. I currently live in the property at 526, 528 North Claremont Street. I've owned the property for roughly 15 years. I'm converting this duplex to condominium for several reasons, but most importantly, it gives me more flexibility with the property. It allows me to live in one, I could sell one, I could hypothecate one or both, or I could simply sell both. But I believe that this project is valuable to the community because instead of one buyer of an unaffordable $2 million plus investment property, it gives the opportunity for two families to buy a home at a more affordable price. This conversion promotes ownership in the neighborhood as well and creates value to the street with new owners and the possibilities that they bring with them to invigorate the community. So thank you for considering the approval of this application, and I hope you can agree with my opinion regarding this project. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there questions of staff or the applicant?
I have a couple of very minor questions. Generally, I think it seems like a good idea, but I have a question about, were you the owner when the second unit was added on? Was that your project?
I was, yes.
So can you provide confirmation that the only thing that comes to mind for me is just the appropriate fire rating between the garages and
yes.
the units?
Yeah,
Just confirmation that I'm sure that was part of the building department's
it definitely was,
review.
yeah. There were fire codes in place.
Okay.
And adequately, they were signed off, so
Yeah.
the permits were approved.
So it would be a separation,
Yeah,
required
there's
separation between the uses.
The assembly is a 1-hour firewall.
Okay.
And it consists of X-type sheetrock and a certain degree of framing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and there is a condition of approval requiring that if there's any known unsafe building conditions, that it will be remedied before final.
Okay. And it seems like it's a relatively new addition to the house?
Yes,
So,
2007.
great. I don't have any other questions.
Any questions down here? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to approve the duplex condominium conversion.
And just to confirm, I have no speaker slips.
Oh, thank you. And with that,
I motion that we approve the tentative partial map for the condominium conversion of the existing.
It might be worth confirming that there's no one in the audience that wants to speak to this item, even though we don't have a speaker slip. Are there any speakers? No? Okay.
go ahead.
I motion to approve the tentative partial map for the condominium conversion of the existing duplex located at 526, 528 North Claremont Street based on the findings for approval in Attachment 1 and subject to the conditions of approval in Attachment 2.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor
Aye.
and those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And this decision is final unless appealed to the City Council in accordance with the San Mateo Municipal Code. What staff would suggest now is, even though we're very early on, is a 10-minute recess to allow us to swap out. You also have before you a memo from Public Works and the Clean Water Program, a revision to Attachment 3, which are the conditions of approval. You'll note that it's got strikeouts and underlines so you can follow along the differences, as well as some suggestions from the adjacent neighborhood that were discussed in the meeting last night with Public Works. That's at the very end. So since you just have the information before you, why don't we just take 10, we'll swap everything out, and then you'll have an opportunity to review the material. If we need longer than 10 minutes, we can make it longer. Is that okay?
So we'll plan on reconvening at 7:20.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will get the meeting started and reopen. Next item on the agenda is the underground flow equalization system. And I will turn things over to Ron Munikawa.
Yes, Chair and members of the commission, my name's Ron Munikawa. I'm the Chief of Planning. So in terms of presentations tonight for the staff, I'll do a brief introduction of some of the planning elements. Then Brad Underwood, Director of Public Works, will get into the description of the project itself. We'll try not to duplicate the material you've seen in the various study sessions, but there will be some duplication. And then the staff presentation will conclude with Matt Frank of Jacobs Engineering. He's sitting right to the left of Richard here, who will do a summary of the EIR issues, the final EIR, and all things related to CEQA. As you can tell, we have quite a number of other staff members here. So if there are questions, you might just direct them to either Brad or myself, and then we can make sure that the appropriate person to answer your questions or the public's questions can respond. So I'll just start off with a brief outline of the project itself. Again, tonight is a public hearing. There are three elements. One is the final environmental impact report, which includes the draft environmental impact report, as well as the response to comments that were received during the public comment period. Site plan and architectural review for the electrical building and the wall that's happening on site, and then a special use permit. Believe it or not, yes, we do have a site that's zoned agricultural in the city of San Mateo. It happens to be the fairgrounds. It allows a public facility, but requires the approval of a special use permit. So what is the context of this project? The context of this project exists within the context of the city's clean water program. The city has studied a number of alternatives with respect to all number of things related to the clean water program. I think many of you on the commission were present when we discussed the wastewater treatment plant modification. So that was one part of the clean water program. This is another component of that program, and Brad Underwood will describe the particulars in terms of the engineering of the project itself. Just in terms of direction from the City Council, in July of 2017, the council at that time directed the staff to further evaluate the event center. And you can see that we've had a number of study sessions. I think that's in the next slide. This is the location of the site, pretty familiar, the event center. You can see the underground structure in yellow on the right-hand side of the screen. Most of the elements of the project will be underground. At grade are a few access hatches, a small electrical building, a few vents, but the predominant features of the project will be actually underground. This is a diagram of the underground facility, which is the large rectangle to the left. And on the right, you can see the electrical building with some landscaping that's going to be provided. This just is a section through, and again, just to repeat, most of the facility is underground, and on the right-hand side of the upper diagram, you can see the electrical building, but again, the predominant features of this project are located below grade. And these are just details of the electrical building itself, very small in comparison to the rest of the site. So again, the project itself, absent the construction methods, the construction measures that will be taken are very much the same as those that you have seen in previous study sessions. So unless there are specific questions for the planning staff, I'd like to turn it over to Brad Underwood, the Director of Public Works, who will talk about some of the more engineering and construction elements of the project.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. It's good to be with you this evening. I'm going to go over the various topics on the left. I'll turn it over to Matt Frank for part of that for the EIR discussion, but I'll run through each one of these topics in my presentation tonight. First, I wanted to talk about community engagement. We've had a fairly extensive community engagement on this project since 2016, nearly 50 meetings with the community. I think I've attended most of those meetings, so I get the gold star. And then we were here before this body on April 9th to talk to you in a study session about the draft environmental impact report, the special use permit, and the SPAR. From that meeting, there was a lot of questions that occurred, both from the commissioners and from the public. So we kind of took a step back, and we had a community meeting on May 21st at the event center itself because we wanted a large facility where we could have a number of attendees, and we were pleased with the turnout of that meeting. There were 90 attendees. On the picture on the right, you see City Manager Drew Corbett attended that meeting as well. And then we came back after that meeting and the work that the staff has been doing over the last several months before you on August 27th for a study session, really to address the key concerns that the commission had shared with us and the community about the actual construction activities that would take place on the site for this project. The community engagement does not stop here at the EIR process. Evidenced, we sent out the final draft EIR already, and we've been working with the community. And Kelly Moran, who's in the audience tonight, reached out to me last Thursday night and said they would like to try to meet before this meeting. We met with them on actually last evening. For a couple of hours and discussed the items that they had sent to us yesterday as well that you have a copy of. So we're committed to staying engaged with the community throughout the duration of the project. We want to address the community concerns as they occur, and we'll continue to do that. I'm going to pass it over now to Matt.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Commissioners. Matt Frank from Jacobs. A brief recap of the draft EIR comment process. So we received over 500 comments on the draft EIR during the public review period last spring. Of the over 500 comments, we carefully reviewed and responded individually to those comments. And in doing so, we discerned 6 common themes, and we see these listed on the pie chart here, each with their own master responses. A lot of focus during that time on capturing what those common themes were and on the appropriate responses. So responses to the individual comments you'll find in Appendix F of the EIR, which includes the comment letters and our responses. And importantly, in the beginning of the final EIR, at the very beginning of the executive summary and in Appendix F, you'll find those detailed master responses that address those common themes. So again, about 80% of the comments we received were addressed by one of those 6 common themes. The remaining 20% had some unique characteristics that we responded to individually, but everything was given due consideration. Yes. An example of how the final EIR was updated. So the final EIR is the complete draft EIR republished, but with strikeout and underlined text showing where we made changes in response to comments or as a result of this deliberative process we've been through over the past several months. So that's the very large document, and the strikeouts and underlines show where the text has changed. Although I think we mostly have hard copies here, the document has been available since September 6th on the web at the website shown, and I'll get into distribution here in just a sec. In terms of the EIR process, there was extensive notice and circulation that went over and above what's normally required under CEQA for the draft EIR. The review process is typically 45 days. We initially went much longer than that, and then with an extension that was granted in May, we went a full 87 days, giving people a little extra time to respond after the Planning Commission and after the public meeting that Brad was describing. The final EIR is typically a very narrow distribution and a very short window for agencies only, and so really that would have been 10 days before today. But we gave, again, almost twice that time, and we released the final EIR to everyone through extensive outreach on September 6th. An errata document was released on September 10th, capturing some additional comments about a fairly extensive process to give people the time that we felt was necessary. And the next slide. And in terms of the mechanisms whereby we got the word out, again, CEQA requires a fairly limited distribution techniques used for the draft EIR, one of 3 standard methods. We used all of those for the draft EIR and then also followed some additional distribution approaches, a lot of use of social media and website updates for this particular project through the Clean Water Program. And the final EIR, again, is usually a very narrow distribution process, but the final EIR, again, was released to everyone, also using these same broad distribution means to make people aware of what was happening. And I will turn it back to Brad to talk in more depth about the project.
Thank you, Matt. So much of the community's concerns has been about minimizing construction impacts. So we have established some monitoring efforts that we will do to analyze and judge those construction impacts as they are occurring on the site. Those have to do with noise, dust, settlement, vibration. I'm also throwing traffic and pipeline construction in this conversation. So in the photo on the right, it shows the underground structure in the yellow there. We currently have 4 wells in that area right now that we've been monitoring for some time. What looks like a blue water drop in a white circle, that's where we intend to install new proposed wells. So we're going to capture some additional information. Those that are closest to the tank itself will monitor the actual drawdown that's occurring from the dewatering within the excavation. And then we've got some out closer into the community, so we get a kind of a better baseline on what's going on outside of the actual construction area as well. You can see the speaker symbol there. Those are noise monitors we're proposing to have on one on the Bay Meadows Park side and one on the Saratoga Drive side. And then same thing with vibration monitors as well, so that we'll be able to monitor those aspects of the construction activity as well as we go forward. This slide just shows you some of the work we've been doing since 2017. The yellow stars are existing groundwater well locations that we've been able to utilize and monitor since that time. This was really to get a baseline of what really happens over the seasons with the groundwater so that we can help determine what's happening with our construction activities as we go forward. So one of the things we are also committing to do for the communities is to monitor some of the structures off of our site. So while we have our planned method of dewatering from within the excavation, the shoring methodology we plan on using in our monitoring efforts, we don't really anticipate any issues with settlement. We still want to provide a level of comfort to the communities that are adjacent to us. So we have, well, what's been required in the documents is a 100-foot radius from the site to utilize for monitoring. We've gone 500 feet, so this is a radius of 500 feet outside, and captured any of the homes within that radius so that we can do some pre-construction inspections of those properties with, of course, homeowner permission that we can do that, so that we can assess those properties in various methodologies. Regarding traffic, it's another big concern, of course, with both construction happening on other sites within this area and just general traffic within the city of San Mateo. So we've worked with the Event Center, who's been very a good and willing partner for us to identify and secure a access easement off of Delaware to the site. So that orange line that's kind of the southeast portion of the Event Center site is an access easement that we'll use to do ingress and egress to and from the site. To haul material, we'll be able to stack vehicles in there as they wait to either offload concrete or pick up earthwork to haul off the site. There will be times where we might not be able to use that that easement for those purposes, so there will be a limited amount of time we anticipate that Saratoga Drive will need to be utilized for the purposes of hauling and accessing the site. Just to summarize some of the things that we've done in working with the community on these aspects. We've eliminated the sheet piling for shoring. That was the methodology that was used by Caltrain on the 25th Avenue grade separation project, where the residents heard a great deal of noise. So that's not occurring on this job. We've also eliminated driven pile foundations, so we will not be driving pile foundations. In regards to dust, again, we will meet the Bay Area Air Quality Management District requirements as we go forward with the project, as would be required with any project. And there are best management practices when you're dealing with earthwork and offloading items from the site. So we'll be following those as well and making adaptations to that process if we see the need to do so. Regarding settlement, again, we've chosen some shoring methodologies and dewatering methodology where we believe will reduce any potential for settlement. The shoring system options that have been chosen are watertight shoring systems, meaning that we shouldn't see a lot of significant impact to the groundwater activity too far outside of the actual excavation. Regarding vibration, we intend to collect some background data of the site as it currently exists once we have the site given to us for the construction work, and then from there we'll establish some maximum limitations that will make the contractor adhere to. And regarding traffic, we have recognized, and the community has helped us as well, with the amount of construction activity is happening there. So we've already put together a team from various departments within the city who are working at least monthly for now on the activity that's in the area, so we can actually plan ahead and try not to have multiple projects working at the same time on significant items that might impact traffic. So that's underway already. Again, the new event center easement helps out a lot with that as far as impacting Saratoga Drive and ease of access for us, kind of away from some of the construction activities. And we fully intend to provide safe pedestrian and cyclist access and routing during the construction process. Regarding the pipelines we'll be installing, we're going to use some trenchless methods. Most of the work will be open cut, but we will use trenchless methods where we can. We believe that the open cut method is more effective in the case that we have for our project. We're also going to stagger that pipeline construction. We have pipeline work on Delaware and on Saratoga. We're not going to do that all at once. That would severely impact the area as far as traffic impacts. So we will stagger the construction activity on that pipeline work. The conditions of approval, while there's the mitigation monitoring and reporting program within the EIR, the mitigation measures actually go beyond that and define some things a little bit better than what the options that are given in the MMRP. We're committed to going above and beyond what would necessarily be required. The conditions of approval addressed, again, the noise and vibration, the groundwater drawdown, settlement issues, construction traffic, and dust control. So since the Planning Commission of August, we heard the comments about these first two bullets. We've actually already put in our specifications that the contractor will have to adhere to. So we'll have a 24/7 contact line that people can call with a live person that will answer the phone and deal with complaints and hear complaints at that moment that they call. The contractor will be required to have that contact line. We've also committed to a perimeter screen fence that will be installed by the contractor on the current fencing. So that'll help with wind and dust issues. And then we did hear about, hey, can you construct the CMU wall early? That has a little bit of concern to us, so we prefer not to do that because we're worried about the contractor installing it and then kind of shrinking their footprint down because of their concern of maybe damaging. So they might want to stay, say, 20 feet away from that. So the site is already fairly constrained. And we kind of view that as it doesn't have a great deal of additional noise and dust advantages from the screen fence that would be installed. So again, we received the community comments that you have received tonight, yesterday. We were glad that we were able to meet with the community members last night. We continue to meet with them in good faith. What's happened out of that process is we're proposing some condition of approval enhancements. Nothing really new necessarily, but just some enhancements to kind of tighten and restrict some of the things we're doing during the construction. Apologize, I know you get a lot of data, a lot of information given to you last week, and here I am bringing this before you. But again, it's a demonstration of we're trying to balance, working with the community, bringing things before you, and so that's why that's occurred. Again, we don't see any of these changes that we're bringing forward. There's no impact to the CEQA document at all. That really stands on its own. So we don't see any impact to the CEQA document. So just let me run through briefly some of the enhanced conditions of approval that we proposed. One is the installing a noise barrier within the construction area along the Bay Meadows Park. So this would be within the permanent easement area, if you will, where the major work and laydown area is going to occur. So that would provide potential additional sound attenuation. The community is concerned about the park and the pathway that runs along that area, and trying to mitigate some of the noise, the background noise that might come off the site. So we believe that's a good effort to make and with them and to help out with that situation. Regarding dust, we didn't propose any dust monitoring stations. What we actually proposed was handheld dust monitors that the construction management staff would have, and if they saw something happen, they could take a reading. We will still do that, but we're also proposing 2 stationary dust monitoring stations, and also a video camera that could capture, visually any kind of dust. A major concern from the community, which we understand, is after hours. We can address things during work hours, but after hours, if things are happening, we need to know about it so then we can make remedies for it on the next day. Regarding settlement, again, we expanded that, we defined the area really to 500-foot radius from the site. So we'll provide those inspections of those properties within that area. We're also going to survey the sidewalks and curb and gutters in those same in front of those same homes. The reason for that is you may or may not know, is that the property owner is responsible for sidewalk maintenance and repair. So if there's damage caused through the construction, we want to know that so that we can make those repairs through the project. One item we also wanted to put out for the community is a voluntary inspection of sewer laterals. And the reason I say voluntary is because the council has an interest in reducing the amount of inflow and infiltration into our sewer system. Some of that comes from the various sewer laterals that are out there. So this is an opportunity to get some of those repaired. So if a resident allows us to do an inspection and that initial inspection shows there's a defect in that sewer lateral, they will be required to repair that lateral at the conclusion of our construction. So we'll give them a time period after the conclusion of that our construction to do that repair. they would be able to participate in our sewer lateral program where we provide up to 50% of the cost, up to $5,000. So we'll make sure that that happens as well. And as far as monitoring goes, again, with groundwater, noise, vibration, and now dust, we'll just monitor that on a continuous basis. We will share that data with through the project website. Once we be able to kind of quality review of that information, we'll be posting that to the website for those that are interested in that. Construction traffic. So we intend, obviously, to develop a management plan for traffic control. We want to work with the community at their request. They wanted some input. So we're going to work with a smaller group from the community residents prior to approving the traffic control plan, so that they can have some input and ask questions about why we may be doing specific things. And then from there, we will be going out into the community and providing a meeting to demonstrate the traffic control plan for those that are interested in seeing what the plan is. Again, we plan on providing for safe and continuous access for all modes of travel. One of the things we want to do too, as far as construction traffic goes, is minimize the amount of queuing we have on the Delaware and Saratoga. So we plan on most of the queuing will occur on the event center, on that easement, that temporary construction easement. There may be times where we need to use those other streets, but we'll keep that to a minimum. Our construction activities, one of the changes, there was a little bit of confusion because Public Works and the building department has defined construction hours, so we just eliminated the building department section where it talks about the weekend work. We intend to try to keep our work within the weekdays, so that's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. If we have any exceptions to that regarding any time exceptions or exemptions or weekend work, we'll go through a process to make sure we identify the need for that. We've proposed limiting our exemptions to 2 months of consecutive working days. That sounds long, and I understand that. We're just not sure how the contractor is going to maybe do his concrete pours and whether they could keep up and do that kind of production. So we wanted to leave that opening just in case they were able to do that. It's regularly we see large concrete pours. They want to get started earlier in the morning because of traffic issues. We will also notify the neighborhood and those interested parties 14 days in advance and 3 days prior to any exemptions we have and any detours that will occur. I will say in regards to that too, I'm kind of big on the changeable message signs that get out there ahead of construction, like road closures and stuff, and so that's part of our normal process for construction methodologies. And regarding communications, we're going to develop a underground flow equalization system project-specific web page and an email list for that. Rather than have it be the Clean Water Program email list, we'll have a specific list people can sign up for if they want to just know about this project. Again, we'll update people through email with a newsletter, and we'll also have the capability, and we'll update those who would like to via text message. I'll turn it back over to Ron.
So next steps, we're here on the September 24th, assuming that the Planning Commission does make a recommendation this evening. It would be scheduled for a public hearing on October 21st, 2019 with the City Council. And again, Public Works anticipates construction beginning in spring of 2020. One clarification I'd like to note is Mr. Frank indicated 173 mail notices went out. Those were to the interested parties, people who signed up at different events. We combined that with our standard mailing. So in fact, a total of 3,793 mailers were sent out for this project. So it's 173 for the people who expressed interest in the EIR and the project itself, but again, we have a 1,000-foot radius and a separate interested parties list, so it was almost 3,800 folks that got that. That concludes the staff presentation. We're available for any questions, either before or after the public hearing section. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgot about the staff recommendation. This is very much from the first page of the staff report. Again, certification. This is a recommendation again to the City Council because this is a recommendation. The project is not final with the Planning Commission. It talks about recommending certification of the final EIR, adoption of the Statement of Overriding Considerations, and then both the SPAR and Special Use Permit. All these findings, in Attachment 1, we've got the separate CEQA findings for the EIR and the Statement of Overriding Considerations, and Attachment 2 includes the conditions, the findings of approval for both site plan and architectural review and special use permit. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the staff on the presentation at this point by the commissioners?
I have a list of questions, but I don't know if this is the right time.
This is the right time to ask.
Okay. I really appreciate the thorough condition list, effort to the conditions of approval, and these revisions that just came before us are really very tight. So yeah, that's great. I feel like there's been a lot of attention to detail on how to specify for the conditions of approval. For noise and vibration and schedule and all the additional monitoring. Let's see, I made a few questions here, so they're not in any particular order. I guess one thing is it possible to show me the easement again? It wasn't clear to me in the drawings, and I'm just curious where it goes on the Bay Meadows site. So it's the solid orange line.
So yeah, if you could, the solid orange line is exactly where the easement is going to go for the access into the site that we're getting from the event center.
Is that the whole thing an easement on the event center property, or just the piece where the dot is in that north-south direction?
So, yeah, it's going to be hard for me. So, yeah, so the site is here, and the access easement is, I think, 30 feet. Is it right? 30 feet? Is 30 feet wide along the fence line, along the park, and along the school, and then along the property here. That's the bridge property, and then exits out to Delaware Street.
So then the orange line that goes in the other direction towards along Delaware, that's actually on Delaware at that point. That's not an easement.
Yeah, correct. That's on Delaware. And the reason it's orange there is because the green is actually our designated haul routes. So we're just kind of identifying a haul route to our site.
A different one,
but
okay.
But the actual easement comes from the site along the fence line to Delaware.
Okay. I guess at this scale, it's hard to
Yeah,
visualize.
yeah. Right.
And the reason I ask is because when I've walked along there or been along that section there, I guess on the Delaware Street portion of it, that little area is where during the county fair, I've noticed that they have a whole sort of city set up there for people that live in mobile homes while the county fair is there, and which was really interesting to see. They were very nice looking, and so there'll be a lot of there's people that are living there during the county fair days, so that may need to be taken into consideration.
So yeah, I should have mentioned we've been working with the event center staff. Dana's here tonight. If we have any issues or questions that you would like to ask her, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer those. But there are restrictions for certain events, and we've been talking about those, and that'll be an ongoing conversation. Some are the dates are dialed in, well ahead of time. Others they may not know right now, but we're willing to work with them on, limiting some construction activity during that time period.
Yeah. Okay. I think I recall we talked about that the last meeting. The other question I have is about the schedule. So you said proposed start date is spring of 2020. What's the duration of construction?
So the approximate duration is 24 months.
Okay. And the other question I had was, I was just curious about the voluntary inspection of the sewer laterals. What are the sewer laterals in that area made of currently? Just
Yeah,
wondering how
I'm
much.
not sure what they're made of. I'm not
They're-
sure if we have anybody.
Those
here.
houses are not like some of the older parts of town where they're like from the 20s. Those houses are probably from the 50s or 40s, is that?
Yeah, I believe you're right. I mean, they could be clay. They
That's what I was
could be. I doubt they're PVC or anything like that. So
Cast
So
iron,
they're going to
maybe?
be maybe cast iron.
So if they're clay, that could be a fair amount of work there, but.
Correct.
I think let me just see if there's any other questions I jotted down. I guess the other piece about the schedule was the part that was added for up to 2 months of consecutive working days. So that's the Monday through Friday, I guess, working days?
Yeah, that's correct.
That is a lot
wouldn't
of
be.
time.
We're talking about working days, so it wouldn't include the weekends. So there would be a break for a couple of days and back at it maybe. But
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of our proposal at this point in time.
It does sound like a lot of time, but I guess at this point, that's to allow some flexibility there. Along the same lines, I noticed there's like a 14-day notification period that you talked about. Is that feasible? I mean, are there going to be times when that's not feasible?
Yeah, we talked to the community members last night about that. There may be times where that's not feasible, but we're going to, we're going to try our best to make sure we can do that. We've recently had some issues on other projects where we recognize the need to get some notification out a little bit ahead of time. So as a department-wide, we're going to try to adhere to that. In this case, it may be a little bit easier because we're centered in one location, one contractor doing the work, and they're not working in various locations throughout the city. So, it'll be one of those things where we probably meet 90% of the time or something.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that schedule is going to be at the forefront of, all the discussions of this project.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we require the contractor to provide us schedules as well, so we should have a good advance warning.
I think that covered, let me see, another question. So I noticed that there was a conditions of approval related to the final inspection or release of utilities. So verification of compliance, and I want to get a better understanding of that. Verification of compliance with acoustical analysis. So the applicant shall submit an acoustical analysis verifying the project complies with noise requirements. So this is at the end of construction when the project is operational?
Yes, Commissioner Williams, that's correct. When we've been talking about noise with this project, it's almost entirely been about construction noise. That condition is intended to deal with the electrical building, which we don't expect any impacts from. And I believe that condition is from the building department, where they just want an analysis of, what's operating inside the electrical building, and how is it being attenuated by the building itself and by the louvers that provide ventilation to the building. We expect it'll be very, very simple. We've never anticipated any operational noise impacts of the project.
Okay.
But that condition is to assure the building department that their standards are met.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Either of you? I have one question, and that was about condition of approval 18. One of the added comments was the city will present the approved traffic control plan to the public at a community meeting. When will that be?
So that will occur after we meet with a smaller group of community members to go through the plan before it's actually approved by the city engineer. So that's, and then the city manager requested that we go out and present the traffic control plan to the community so that they could see what's actually going to happen.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to-
Through the chair? Sure. Thank you for the presentation. It looks like there's been a tremendous amount of effort to work with the community to alleviate some of the pain and angst associated with such a large project surrounded by built-out properties. I've got some questions, not specifically around the construction procedures, which seem to be best practices, and a lot of thought and design has been put into the efforts here. I want to step back just a little bit and walk through where we are today and how we got here and how the different documentation works together. This project is part of the Clean Water Project, which the storage tank, or whatever it is called today, was originally scoped in the 2014 EIR as part of the in-system storage program, correct? So that EIR at that time had a 98 million gallons a day peak wet weather flow, and there was a choice between going with the full conveyance program or an in-system program. The council picked the in-system storage program.
That's correct.
Great. So 2014, the different designs started in different locations, specifically around where to place this storage facility was put forward. And in 2017, the location was picked by the city council for this project. That again was based on the 2014 EIR, correct? Or CEQA?
So there was a program EIR that was done for the Clean Water Project as a whole, and then there's a project EIR that was done simply for the in-system storage solution.
Okay. So again, they were based on the 98 million gallon peak wet weather flow. And that was in 2017. In 2018, same question I had last time you folks were here, there was an addendum to the Clean Water Program, which changed the peak wet weather flow from 98 to 78 million gallons. And that addendum has never been acknowledged in the most current EIR. We are still using the flow rate of 98 peak wet weather million gallons peak wet weather flow. And I am curious, still curious, why we have not acknowledged that addendum in this CEQA.
If I may respond, in terms of this particular project itself, the dynamics were set in place with the overall clean water program. I'm not aware of all the flows that have been estimated for the project itself. Nevertheless, as recently as 2017, the City Council did indicate that this was the preferred site and for staff to work on the underground storage tank facility at this particular site. So the items that you have before you this evening are a site plan and architectural review, which talk about the architectural details of the project, a special use permit, which talks about the impacts of the project on the adjacent neighborhood, and both Mr. Underwood as well as Matt Frank have talked about primarily construction impacts, although as Mr. Frank indicated, there'll be some consideration of post-construction impacts, and then finally certification of a final EIR. It would not be the intent tonight to review all right, is this the project the city already wants? As far as the staff is concerned, we've received our direction in July of 2017 from the city council to pursue this project. And again, the elements before the commission this evening are site plan and architectural review, those findings, the special use permit, primarily in terms of air quality, noise, and other impacts on the community. And then thirdly, the environmental impact, which is to say, have the environmental impacts adequately been addressed that could possibly be generated by the project. And again, you also have a statement of overriding considerations for noise, which in a conservative mode, those impacts cannot be mitigated to a less than significant impact. You know, I'm not about to say which numbers are valid or not valid. I'm merely indicating what is before the purview in terms of the Planning Commission this evening.
Through the chair.
I get what you're saying.
Thank you.
But
No, I appreciate it, Ron.
That's not what we're talking about tonight.
I appreciate that. I beg to differ slightly, since there was documentation that was approved in 2017, which a 2018 document, came after the approval, and I was just trying to figure out if the council has ever seen the difference and the implications of what that could be to this project. And I am under the impression that they have not. So that is the reason for the question once again. We look at, to me, on face value, it looks like we're using documentation or data that has not been updated in this final EIR. I have one other question at this point, and it has to do with the executive summary by Corolla Brothers or Corolla Engineering in October of 2014. In the executive summary of 2014, it was stated that the sub-basin focused rehab, it needed to include studies of the sub-basin focused rehab and how they will be utilized in setting the size of the wastewater treatment plant per the requirements of the cease and desist order and the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permits. And I have not seen documentation where either one of those requirements have been met. I don't see them in the EIR, and I haven't seen them in any of the packages that have been presented to us. Have those studies been done per the requirements for the permits?
Good evening, Commissioners. Azalea Mitch, Deputy Public Works Director. The Clean Water Program approach has been a multifaceted, comprehensive approach that focuses on evaluating and reducing inflow and infiltration. We get to the sub-basin approach, and that's why the City Council has directed us to engage residents to replace their laterals. A lot of that inflow comes from private homes, and laterals are privately owned. We do subsidize that effort. And as part of that, we also have our capital improvement program. We've been replacing a lot of sewers within the basins, and we inspect them, we rehabilitate them. So that's also part of the effort. In addition to that, we're expanding the wastewater treatment plant to be able to convey, right, and treat 78 million gallons a day, and to withhold some of that flow within the in-system, the storage system, and overall that will be able to handle 98. So it is a multifaceted approach that looks at the sub-basins in conjunction with the expansion of the treatment plant, and we have quarterly updates to the regional board so that we can meet the requirements placed in the cease and desist order.
Thank you very much for that information. Simple question, have the studies that were required by the cease and desist order and the NPDES been performed?
The NPDES and the cease and desist order requires us to have a program in place. And the cease and desist order does, and the NPDES does approve the clean water program approach, and we provide periodic and annual updates based on our progress.
Okay. So those studies are available?
There are no studies. It's the entire clean water program approach.
Okay,
So the description of the approach was approved by the regional state.
I understand that. The executive summary specifically states that those studies were supposed to have been completed for this project to go forward.
There is no requirement in the permit. It's a program approach.
Okay, then the executive summary is wrong. Okay.
Thank you.
One last question on that then. For both the 98 peak wet weather flow data and the 78 million gallons per day peak wet weather flow data, have those studies been completed and are they available?
We do have a hydraulic assessment update that is currently in draft form. So yes, that is in the process of being finalized. That describes the hydraulic approach.
Okay, so the original CEQA in 2014, or 2014 clearly states numerous times that the city of San Mateo had updated their flow method, and it determined there was a 98 million gallons a day peak wet weather flow. Is that study available?
That is the study that I am talking about in terms of the hydraulic assessment. So that is currently in draft form.
That's in draft form.
It has not been
In
finalized.
2014 that it was complete.
It has been updated based on the improvements that we've been designing.
Is the original study available?
I don't believe that there was a 2014 Corollo study, and things have been built upon that, and we're currently updating based on the recent improvements and the overall hydraulic updates.
Okay, actually, it wasn't a study by Corolla, it was a study by the city of San Mateo. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for my questions?
Romero, do you have questions?
And the updated conditions of approval you have here under item 37, I believe that is C, the integration of the 2 additional stationary dust monitors and the camera. Is the camera going to be a live feed, a 24-hour recorded camera?
Yeah, that's the intent, that we'll have that up and available for people to view.
Okay. And in addition, if there are issues or concerns, would individuals who will be, is there a 24-hour person that will be monitoring that camera itself as the 24-hour live person is monitoring the phone hotline?
No, we won't be monitoring the camera itself. We will have someone at the phone line, so if someone notices something from the community, and then we can go, the intent is to be able to go back and see what actually is happening. It will give us a better sense for what actions we need to take to prevent any dust from leaving the site the next day.
Okay. And my last question is, would all this information from complaints on the hotline or any things that comes up from the handheld dust monitoring or the stationary dust monitoring be available for the public to view on the project website?
Yeah, that's the intent with any of the data we collect, is once we have the ability to look at the quality of the data, we want to make sure there's no inconsistencies with the data. We'll be able to post that online.
And that's including the data that you had previously discussed, the preliminary data measurements of vibrations outside of the construction in the neighborhoods before construction, correct?
Yeah, if someone would want that. I don't know that we posted any of that information at this point in time, but we could post that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, we will open up the public hearing at this point. Do we have speaker slips?
First speaker, Vanessa Sewell, followed by Kelly Moran.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Sewell. We're at Bay Meadows, and one of the property owners that's nearest the site. For the most part, we just wanted to thank the commission, thank staff, and the event center for working with us. We realize this has been quite a large undertaking, and we're really grateful for some of the concessions and compromises and things we have come to an agreement on. Especially, specifically, even in the last couple of days with the addition of a noise barrier for the park. And that's going to help not just the neighborhood, but all the park users, the kids that are there doing soccer, the people that take a lunch break or take their meetings walking around the park. So it's a really great thing. We're also really looking forward to having the stationary dust monitors and having just that extra layer of accountability and having that data point there continuously. And also the extension of the property inspections, making sure that we're really taking a look at all the properties within that area that could be affected, and the sewer laterals as well. So really we just want to thank you for meeting with us both here and after hours even to get this done. I think it's really creating a good working relationship and trust with neighbors and the community. So I hope that we can continue to do that going forward and throughout this project as we come up with the traffic plan and multiple other things. So thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly Moran, followed by Jonathan Scharfman.
Hi, I'm Kelly Moran. I'm president of the Bay Meadows Neighborhood Alliance, and I'm speaking on behalf of the community. And I'd like to echo what Vanessa Sewell just said. First, I just want to remind you, those of you who were here back in the spring when we first saw you about this project, we were petrified about the safety of our families and the ability to live through the construction project. And we just can't tell you how much we appreciate that the staff did a 180 on all of those things and really stepped back and said, no, that's not what we're intending to do. That's never been our intent, to do those kinds of things to the community. And so I've really appreciated this staff commitment from the city manager right on down to work with our neighborhood to protect our community, to our health, our park, which serves as our backyard since we don't have backyards, and to minimize the quality of life impacts from this project. It's not going to be a lot of fun. I'd really rather not have it outside my bedroom window, but given the alternative, which would have been to dig up for several years one of our big neighborhood parks in either Bay Meadows or Fiesta Gardens, I got to say I'm grateful that the event center did agree to host the facility and that we continue to work together on trying to make this the least obnoxious possible. There are a couple things. First, I do want to thank the staff for the late changes and just let you know the reason that all happened so late is that conditions of approval didn't get to us until Friday night. So we had to review them over the weekend. I actually had to take part of Monday off to put stuff together so we could have the meeting, and the staff did jump on a dime to meet with us last night and worked very late, which I really appreciate, and worked hard today. But that's a problem with the city process and something I want to point out as a precedent on behalf of the neighborhood. I think there might still be a few loose ends here, but those can be tied up between now and the city council meeting, and I'm optimistic that anything that we have to read it over more carefully than we got to in the last hour, but I'm optimistic that any loose ends that we don't deal with tonight are things that we can deal with in the future with the staff, given the very cooperative attitude that they've had, and we're trying to bring that same attitude to the discussions. There are a couple things I want to call to your attention. The first one, as Commissioner Williams noted, the 2 months exception is quite lengthy. And if there was really a concrete pour every day for 2 months, I would freak out. So I would ask that there just be that the city be directed to minimize the duration of any exceptions, recognizing that they don't know exactly how long that's going to be. And I'm sure they picked 2 months to give themselves maximum flexibility. But we live with concrete pours all the time, and normally they're one-day activities, and then there's quite a break before the next one. But they don't know exactly what's going to happen with the contractor here. So we'd be asking that you ask the staff, and maybe we can work with the staff between now and the council, to come up with some language that says that the staff will seek to minimize the duration of those exception times. Then there's three things that are general, that are lessons learned that from our neighborhood that we'd like to ask you to discuss and to consider, not just for this project, but for future projects modifying the standard conditions of approval. And the first one is around dewatering pumps. That condition about quiet packages is in every commission approval, at least as far as I can remember. And what happens is they put out a pump, and maybe it's not super, super loud, but you can still hear it through your windows. More importantly, it's the quality of the noise and the fact it's running 24 hours a day. So Franklin Templeton's was the worst one of recent note. The dewatering time for this project will be like a year. Franklin Templeton, it was a few months. And the pump went like this. And that up and down vibration actually happened 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was so obnoxious. That's something that can be solved with some noise reducing housing on there. And I know it says quiet packages and housing if feasible, but one of the things the city should be requiring of these dewatering pumps that are anywhere near homes is to have them with a box entirely over them to keep that noise under control, because it's the quality of the noise, not just the volume, that affects quality of life. So that's the first one, housing for dewatering pumps. The second is the definition of construction. We've observed that the city, at least the planning staff, public works staff tell me they have a different approach, but at least the planning staff can allow people to do all kinds of construction-related things outside of construction hours. The only thing that's prohibited is actually fully mobilizing your crew and running full bore into construction. So deliveries in the middle of the night, check. Deliveries early in the morning, check. People out there at 6 a.m. moving equipment around, yep. Trucks queuing up on the street and in the neighborhood, those concrete trucks with their little bells, ding, 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 ding. Yep, all of these things outside of working hours, and it just drives you crazy. You don't get to sleep. You don't get the quality of life with those things going on. So we proposed a definition of construction, which is, if you look at the back of the memo that you've got, it says COA 34, the second bullet. It's a request to define construction to include all activities in support of construction, to make that super clear, anything that generates noise. So the idea here is to have a definition to keep people from doing noisy things, but not keep the crew from arriving on the site and having their on-site safety briefings and any preparatory briefings before they turn on the equipment at 7. The idea is to keep the noise down and to stop all those middle-of-the-night deliveries and other things that have been happening in our neighborhood. And we really experience this because we have so much construction going on. But I think this is going to be something that if the city is willing to make this change in the standard condition of approval to clarify what's allowed, construction workers coming in and having safety briefings, totally allowed. Noise generating activity outside of working hours, not allowed. That would be very, very helpful for all the residents of the city. So pump housings, construction definition, and the third one is a smaller but important one, which is the traffic control plan. Again, another standard condition of approval. We really appreciate that Public Works is willing to work with us on our particular neighborhood one, making some special exceptions given the transit-oriented development level area that's there. And we've had some really bad experiences with these plans. What we've learned is that the plan is all about car management, and that it hasn't been, these plans are not doing a good job of providing for pedestrian and bicycle safety. And that means even along commute corridors, we've had drastically unsafe conditions approved as part of these plans. So the immediate solution is a very simple one. The name of those plans for future documents be renamed something along the lines of Traffic, Bike, and Pedestrian Control and Safety Plan, but something that includes bikes and pedestrians and mentions safety as well as control. And I know that the staff are trying to do that, but by emphasizing that and requiring the contractors and others in the process to set those co-equal goals of control and safety, and to very explicitly include bicycles and pedestrians, it changes the name of the game. And those are things that would be very helpful and that we've learned from all of our experience in all the projects, and I'm not going to walk you through all of that. So in closing, I want to thank you for your help, and again, thank the staff in the Event Center for working with us. And we do look forward to continuing to work with folks as a neighborhood to try to be very productive in these interactions. But we really are concerned about our quality of life, and we'll be vigorously advocating for that as it proceeds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jonathan Scharfman.
Thank you. I'm Jonathan Scharfman, 490 East 28th Avenue, and I'm a member of the Bay Meadows Neighborhood Alliance. And I'm speaking on behalf of the neighborhood. I want to echo the comments that have already been made by Vanessa and also by Kelly. And just as a reflection point, I stood before you commenting on the draft EIR and was very concerned on behalf of myself and my family, as well as the neighborhood, on how the project was presented, and I raised specific concerns regarding the construction methodology that was proposed and the scope of the dewatering that was also contained in the draft report. And I just want to personally thank and commend the staff for the time that was taken, as well as the consulting crew. I'm sure there was a lot of debate about how to reconcile a number of the issues that we raised. They were difficult, we believe necessary issues to protect the health and safety of not just our community, but the communities surrounding us. And we had multiple meetings with our friends at San Mateo Unified, and also at Fiesta Gardens, and we had representatives also join us for meetings with staff to address these issues. And I just want to emphasize, I really think this reflects good faith on the part of the staff, on the part of the city to address these issues, and we look forward to more of the same as we transition into the construction phase of the project. So thanks again. And one last shout out to the Event Center, because they really gone the extra mile in trying to address a number of these issues as well.
Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers? I have no more speakers left.
Okay, thank you. We'll close the public hearing. So now we'll open the meeting up for comments by the commissioners on the items before us. Ramiro, would you like to start?
I want to commend staff on their diligence and also on their quick response to having a meeting so quickly from Friday to Monday, and hearing the citizens' concerns and addressing those in this updated conditions of approval. I do feel that the staff have gone and the city have gone above and beyond by increasing the construction zone from 100 to 500 feet. Hearing the major issues and concerns were noise, vibration, and dust, and putting in equipment and having that documented in all the right places, online, mail, text, and things like that. So in consideration for, sorry, I'm looking over the recommendations. With the new updated conditions of approval, I see no issues. You've addressed a lot of the concerns that I had concerning noise and vibrations and the dust. So I do have one question. Can I ask a question? Okay. The installation of the noise barriers, is that to be done pre-construction or during construction? On some information, it says during construction.
So that will happen pre-construction, and then the final product at the end of the construction is going to be a concrete block wall.
Okay, perfect. Good.
Thank you. Would you like to go next?
Yeah, I echo the sentiments of everybody that it seems like this has been a very collaborative effort. I'm coming in later in the process than others, but, or than all of you, I guess. And so yeah, I'm impressed with the level of collaboration and detail to the conditions of approval. I would say that everything seems to have been addressed really well with a couple of comments. And it's that issue of the allowance for up to 2 months of exemption to the construction hours. And, you know, probably that won't need to be utilized because that's, well, I guess it's hard to say because when you read through the criteria, you know, one of the criteria is that it may decrease the total construction time. You know, so I think it's probably a good allowance or exemption to have in the specs to allow that flexibility and, you know, to be able to look for some ways to work more efficiently. It's just something that concerns me. And I think that led me to my other question or issue. When you look at, I guess it's the question of bidder qualifications. So this would be a publicly bid project, right? And I guess how does that get addressed?
Through the chair, if I may, we are actually doing a pre-qualification for the bidders. So that looks at financials, safety records, their ability to do a project of this size. So we'll have a well-qualified contractor that will be getting the project.
Okay, so I think, you know, balancing out that flexibility for the timing to making sure, you know, we've got a strong set of pre-qualified bidders, pre-qualifications for bidders, I think balances that out. So I think the project seems, you know, like it's going along very well and it's well thought out and you're finding all the pieces to satisfy the community and still make it a feasible project.
Thank you. John, you're next. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you for the great public comments, all the fantastic work put into this project by staff, consultants, fellow commissioners, and public. As it pertains to recommend a certificate of final environmental impact report, I will not be recommending that to the city council, as I feel that, as I had stated before, we've left out a critical component of this discussion, and that specifically has to do with the difference between 98 million gallons per day peak wet weather flow, which was established in 2014, and then the 78 million gallons peak weather flow established in an addendum B or an addendum in 2018. I think it's something that the city council needs to be brought up to speed on and just help have that discussed. I also do not want to recommend the adoption of the statement of overriding considerations regarding the significant and unavoidable noise impact based on the findings of approval. I don't think that we have met the specific requirement of there being economic, legal, social, technological, or other considerations, including provision of employment opportunities for highly trained workers, make infeasible the mitigation measures or project alternatives identified in the final EIR. I don't believe that those standings have been met, and for that reason, I will not be recommending the adoption of the statement of overriding. The other two, the SPAR and the special use permit, really aren't something that I feel comfortable with if I am already recommending against the final EIR and the statement of overriding considerations. I do have a list of a couple of conditions of approval, which I would like to be able to float by my fellow planning commissioners to see if they would have any desire to implement them as part of our recommendation this evening. And if so, if you would want me to read them now.
It'd be good if we had a copy, but.
No problem.
Thank you.
They're pretty simple. I think it's along the same line that I'd already asked staff about a few times now, and I think they should be easily accommodated for or be able to get to the City Council for their hearing on October 21st. Condition number one, supply the methodology, including data sources, computer modeling, and testing that was used to arrive at the 78 million gallon peak wet weather flow identified in addendum number 1 and the 98 peak wet weather flow per the model of the City of San Mateo in the 2014 original CEQA. Item number 2, include the studies of the sub-basin focused rehab and how they were utilized in setting the size of the wastewater treatment plant per the requirements of the cease and desist order and the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits. Item number 3, if item 2 above is not complete, include the report, the findings of the studies at the 2 neighborhoods called in for the executive summary, Los Prados east of Highway 101 and the San Mateo Village west of Highway 101, and how they were utilized in the setting of the size of the wastewater treatment program. The reason why I'm asking for those conditions of approval as they apply to this project is outlined in the executive summary by Corolla, which states that these findings or this data needs to be assembled to properly program the whole wastewater system program. So, if commissioners would have any interest.
You know, if I can just chime in, I think certainly we would need to summarize the commission's comments, including Commissioner Ebeneter's comments, and to the degree possible, we'll look at this. But I would again remind the commission that the project before you is the project that is being proposed. We can talk about the amount of millions of gallons that are being processed, the need for the project, whether there are alternative means and methods, what the decisions were made incrementally to get to this project. But in fact, the project before you is the project that you will be rendering a vote on. So again, do you feel the EIR is adequate? Do you feel the overriding considerations are adequate? Do you feel that the site plan and architectural review findings can be made, and whether a special use permit findings can be made? So for example, when we processed the new main library, there was some concern. The discussion was not, do we need a main library? The City Council directed that a new main library would be constructed. A site plan and architectural review was then processed by the Planning Commission, ultimately by the City Council, to talk about the design of that new library. It was not to determine, do we really need a new library? So certainly, I think we'll summarize the comments, and you know, I certainly understand what Commissioner Ebeneter is asking for in terms of the original calculations that were done to determine the methodology and what was needed and what the entire clean water program is based upon. But tonight, it's simply the project that is before you, which is the underground storage tank. So again, I can't tell you how to vote. Even if I did, you're independently appointed planning commissioner, so you'll make the decisions or recommendations as you see fit. But again, I would just emphasize that the items that are on this slide constitute basically what the commission is asking to render a recommendation on. Certainly, I think there have been some questions about methodology and what the million gallons, what that number is. We can certainly take a look at that. I think that question might come up with the commission. And if the commission all of a sudden decides, oh, we really don't need this project, well, then that's a whole separate question. But that is not the question before the commission. The commission's question is, Can you recommend certification of the final EIR? Can you recommend adoption of the statement of overriding considerations? And both for the SPAR and the special use permit, do you think that the findings are adequate and the conditions of approval, the revised conditions of approval that were at your places tonight, adequately address not only the CEQA findings, but the findings that are used to support both the site plan and architectural review and the special use permit? So I don't mean any disrespect here. I'm just trying to let the Planning Commission know from staff's perspective, this is how we see tonight's hearing.
Are you done? Yeah. Okay. Just want to make sure I didn't cut you off. I was very fortunate to start with this project back on the Public Works Commission and go through the process of choosing the location for this. So it's very exciting for me to see it come to fruition after all of the work that went into it at the beginning. I will echo my fellow commissioners on being so impressed with staff and the consultants and the public in working together to make a better plan. It's so helpful to have the public be engaged and informed and have so much to contribute and to have everybody be willing to listen. It doesn't happen always, so it's very exciting to see that happen in San Mateo. And I do also appreciate the relationship with the Event Center and the flexibility and how that's going to work to make everything flow smoothly. I would be interested in hearing more about John's questions as we go forward, but I do agree with staff that what we're looking at tonight is the UFAS project, and John's questions would apply to the whole. So would there be any thought on when we would be able to hear comments on that?
I guess I would wonder how we would do that. Is that if the commission wants a study session or something where we could come before you and present that? I guess that would be the only thing I could think of, but I don't know. I'll leave.
Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. A couple things. Number one, since the Planning Commission's raised it, we'll have to have some sort of summary of the discussion in the staff report going forward to the City Council. There may be some thought on the City Council. Yes, we'd like to have this information. What we can do is, and I will admit I don't know all those technical details, but we would work with the Public Works staff to prepare a memo with the information that we have that I think Ms. Mitch had provided and send it forward as an informational item to the Planning Commission.
To the City Council.
Back to the Planning Commission. Back to the Planning Commission.
Caio Ariano, Assistant City Attorney. I'm legal counsel to the Public Works Department and the Clean Water Program. Just a couple of points of clarification here on some of the issues that we seem to be grappling with this evening. So on the question of where do these numbers come from, 98 MGD versus 78 MGD, 78 MGD refers to the treatment capacity at the treatment plant, all the way downstream at Detroit Drive. That's what the addendum was that Commissioner Ebnetter was referring to pertained to the treatment plant project. Now, 98 MGD refers to the collection system as a whole and the amount of effluent contained in the collection system. There will be more in the collection system than is capable of being handled at the treatment plant. We have 200 plus miles of sanitary sewers, all of that effluent upstream from the treatment plant, which can only handle a 78 MGD of peak wet weather flow. So that's the difference there. Separately, I would like to emphasize that when we're asking for a specific recommendation on the EIR, the Statement of Overriding Considerations, and the 2 land use entitlements, the SPAR and the special use permit, well, set the land use entitlements aside for a second. The EIR, the question before you is whether the analysis on the environmental impacts is adequate. not whether you agree with the underlying premise of the project. That is a perfectly reasonable position to take, perfectly reasonable question to ask, but as Mr. Munakawa was suggesting, the question before you is, have the project applicants, in this case the City Public Works Department, adequately analyzed the potential environmental impacts of the project they would like to build? And that's really the scope of the decision we are asking the Planning Commission to make in terms of what recommendation it makes to the City Council.
Thank you.
Through the chair. Thank you for the extended time speaking about this subject this evening. I am still concerned of the overall project, and I'll tell you why I look at it as it is not separated. And again, it comes from the executive summary by Corolla. Their statement is, the city embarked on this plan recognizing that a coordinated system-wide wastewater effort and complementary spending plan was needed because the collection system, wet weather storage, and wet weather treatment plant are related, wastewater treatment plant are related systems that should not be evaluated individually. Potential alternatives aimed at reducing collection system SSOs may affect wastewater treatment plan and storage facility required and or provide a means to optimize these facilities. There is no reason to continue to argue this point this evening here. I think it will end up with the City Council, obviously. I am just trying to make it part of our recommendations to look for additional conditions of approval. If that is not something staff thinks is appropriate, then that's how it is. I thought we could always add enhanced conditions of approval as staff previously did. I'm fine. It'll end up with the City Council.
Okay, so we need a motion. Does the commission feel they would like to go item by item, or would they like to enact a motion that includes all 4 items?
You know, at this point, I'm completely fine with all 4. I don't see why you break them out. If you don't recommend the first 2, you don't get to the last 2.
Okay.
So you can just read, I think if you have the staff report in front of you, under the recommendation, if somebody wants to make a motion, you can just read directly from those 2 paragraphs.
Perfect. Is there a motion to approve the project?
I'll make a motion to approve.
So we need to go through and
Read this. I make a motion to approve and recommend certification of the final EIR, Environmental Impact Report, and recommend adoption of the Statement of Overriding Considerations regarding the significant and unavoidable noise impact based on the findings for approval, and recommend approval of the Site Plan and Architectural Review, SPAR, application for the construction of new buildings or walls, fences over 6 feet in height, and recommend approval of the special use permit to allow the use of the site for a public facility in the A Agricultural District based on the findings for approval.
And I would just like to clarify that we're talking about the CEQA findings and the statement of overriding considerations that are attachment 1 as part of your staff report, the findings for the SPAR and the special use permit that are attachment 2, and then subject to the conditions of approval as revised and presented to the Planning Commission this evening.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed?
Nay.
Vote is 3-1, and the motion passes.
And again, this is a recommendation to the City Council, and we would be going forward. Oops, let me go back here. As we indicated, City Council meeting will be scheduled for October 21st of this year.
Thank you. Reports and announcements?
we will not have a planning commission meeting, the first meeting in October. So there aren't any agenda items that are ready. The second meeting in October, October 22nd, we have 2 items. The ever-present 866 View Ridge Drive, we think we've gotten the plans in good enough shape that we can bring them back and they're consistent. And also a study session on Peninsula Heights. I think I sent you all a link to the What's Happening page, but those are townhouse projects that are, I can go ahead and do it again. Townhouse project that's replacing some offices up off of Campus Drive in the office park there behind Piazzas, if you're familiar with that area. And then on November the 12th, we plan to have a public hearing on 180 East 3rd Avenue, which is the project that would replace what is the former Aaron Brothers site, right next to the central parking garage. I think most of you, except for perhaps Commissioner Williams, were on the commission when we reviewed that in study session. So that's it. We do have on the calendar a planning commission meeting scheduled for November 26th, and yes, I do understand that's Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We don't have anything scheduled. We don't have anything scheduled yet for the first meeting in December. I would hold both of those open, and if you haven't checked the calendar, we never have the second meeting in December, the 4th Tuesday in December. That's just not appropriate. So those are the remaining meetings for the year. So if any, once I do get clarity as the agenda does fill up, I'll certainly give you a heads up on those items, the What's Happening page link, so you can at least become a little bit familiar with them before the packet goes out. And that concludes the staff report.
Do any commissioners have anything they'd like in announcements? No? Okay, meeting is adjourned.
Your assistance today?